Thank you, Susan. We haven't started the meeting
We've
yet?
not started the meeting yet,
Well, I appreciate you waiting.
and Paul is coming, but he's going to be a bit late. But we do have a quorum now.
I knew you would.
Okay. Well, thank you for abiding by my crazy time schedule. But let's call the February 27th, 2025 Board of Library Trustees meeting in order, and we'll have a roll call.
Would you like for me to do the honors?
You can do that.
Sure. Mr. Eisbart,
Present.
Mr. Moss, Mr. Freistoffer,
Present.
Mr. Williams,
Present.
Mr. Pastrick,
Here.
and Mr. Seifert and Ms. Shamanoff are absent.
Oh, well, we do have a quorum, so let's have the adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion for that purpose?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay? Okay. And the adoption of the minutes, if, this is better. If there is no objection, I'd like to group A through D. Hearing none. The approval of minutes of regular session, January 23rd, 25. Minutes of the executive session, January 23rd of 25. The minutes of the Board of Finance meeting, January 23, 25. And the minutes of approval of the claims, February 13th, 2025.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Tom. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. It passes. Financial report, January of 2025.
I am going to have Jill do the report this year, this month. So,
Okay.
yeah. We'll tag team.
Yeah, we'll do. I'm going to do some, and he's going to talk about something here in a little bit. This month, currently all lines are currently spending above their benchmarks, which good thing for only January. This time, we've been busy completing all the W-2s and 1099s right now, and along with that, got all the state gateway filings completed, which included the library annual report, and along with those, the required filings were the internal control affirmations, the publication of the cash and investment report, and tomorrow the ad will run in the paper, and then we will file that in Gateway as well. Also, the annual debt report was taken care of. And this year, there was a new report for contracts covering fire and emergency medical services. Even though that doesn't pertain to us, we still had to go ahead and take care of that one as well. And then we also took care of the Indiana Public Library annual report, which I believe Susan will be talking about that today. Along with that, we're now starting to prepare reports and other items relating to the annual audit by the State Board of Accounts and preparation of the annual comprehensive financial report. We've had our first meeting with Crow, who handled our audits the last several years, and looking to start the middle of April with that. And due to the changes this year with the 2026 budget submission, we have requested that we hopefully finish that by the end of May. Last couple of years, it's ran really late into June, and we really hope to finish that up by the end of May this time. It's just been pushing us too late, and the last couple of years, we've had to file for an extension, and we don't want to continue to do that.
Jill, have their fees gone up? Have they indicated what their hourly rate is, or?
We haven't been told that as of yet, but hopefully not.
They have not informed us of any increase, neither state or Crow, so we're assuming it's going to be the same rates.
Yeah.
Which still, given CPA firms, they're fairly reasonable. Our entire audit last year was like $10,000, which sounds like a lot, but the foundation is close to $9,000. So, and we have a tremendous more amount of work that has to be done with others.
Yeah.
Jill, can you remind me, why don't we have contract issue, there are no contracts for fire and medical again?
That,
You were talking about
Oh.
fire and emergency that we have to file with the state, I think it is. Why is it we don't have contracts?
because that's just with the fire departments, I believe, isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's just a service
Yeah.
for the
Service.
library. It's a service provided by
Yeah.
the city and the county, depending on who it is. So we
Yeah.
don't need a specific contract for those
They were
services.
looking for specific filings for, when, for instance, in Allen County, where you had the ambulance services and things like that were being contracted by, the city and all. That was what the state was looking for. Well, we don't have any contracts like
Got it.
that and stuff, so, yeah.
So some townships will have interlocal agreements
Right.
with others and fire territories and districts that are part of this recording that they've asked from SBOA.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think Dave's going to talk about, we are watching the Senate Bill 1 and the potential impacts for the library.
Yeah, you may have seen articles this week about, in the, paper about the meeting with the state, or the Fort Wayne Community Schools, and they reported the same thing. I mean, this is a serious budget bill going through the process right now, and the latest estimates from the Legislative Service Agency are indicating anywhere from 1.1 to 3.4 over the 3-year period that we could lose 3.4 million in the current setup with the current rules that are being proposed. And, just as a synopsis, not to get into the weeds, but they basically said we're going to freeze the levy growth in 2026 and then limit it to 1% in 27, 2% in 28. So LSA has made those estimates based on, for instance, we would have been at about 5.4% if those limitations hadn't been there. So it is a serious hit to revenue. I mean, we will have to adjust our budgeting and stuff. Luckily, we will be informed well before we start our budget process here. And as Jill mentioned, I think I've mentioned already, because we will be going through this binding review budget this year, we will have to turn it into the city by September 1st. So whereas we would normally go and have our budget, finished in the October board meeting, we'll need to have that a couple of months early so that we can get there. So again, it's a domino. We want the audit to be completed so that we can begin on the budget. And certainly by at that point, we'll know what the status of Senate Bill 1 or any other amendments to that would hit our revenue sources. So that's the main thing we're watching right now, as are a lot of the other public entities in here.
Okay,
Does anybody have any questions we can answer?
questions? Tom?
No.
No? Okay. We have then the approval of claims.
Well, we'll need a
Motion for the-
motion for the approval of the financial report.
Yeah, can I
So
have a
moved.
motion for the report of January 2025?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Now the claims.
Today's claims are quite large, $1.4 million, and high dollar are no surprise. Signature Lawn, and for, well, I was gonna say snow removal, but actually salt, for all of our, ice that we've had lately, $395,000 for that. And then our solar project was $115,000, and furniture for our studio was at $92,000.
Questions? Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. And we'll pass the claims around.
I might go that way instead.
Committee, Marty's not here for capital projects?
Marty is not here, but he asked if I could say a few words to report out on the committee.
Absolutely.
Mr. Seifert, our committee chair, could not be here today, but he wanted me to share that, as we all know, we are so grateful that at the January 28th Fort Wayne City Council meeting, we did receive approval for the bonding and appropriation for Phase 1 of our facility master plan. We have issued a request for proposal for the services of an owner's rep for Phase 1 of the plan. That has been issued. It's been a few weeks at this point. Thank you, Kim, for all your work in coordinating that, and I believe proposals are due back in the middle of next week, and we will report out when we have those results, who has put in a proposal, and we do have plans to evaluate those proposals, and we have interviews scheduled for the finalists for that project in March. Happy to answer any questions.
How many did we solicit?
I believe Kim told me that we sent it out to a group of 10 vendors,
We had 10.
10?
and we'll find out next week how many will reply.
Okay. Any questions on the Capital Projects Committee? Well, let's move to the Rolland Center.
Yes, so February is, of course, the month of President's Day and Lincoln's birthday. Also, we are at just over the 3-year mark of the Rolland Center for Lincoln Research being open to the public. So I have asked Curt to give us an update on the work that the Rolland Center has been doing at the main library and the community. And he also has, I'll still say, a fairly new staff member for ACPL here joining us to talk about her work as well. So Curt, I'll let you introduce Sarah to the team.
Thank you very much. I promise to be brief because I think you really want to hear from Sarah. The Rolland Center for Lincoln Research, as Susan articulated, we just finished 3 full years of being open to the public, and I'm still as excited as we were in 2009, September 2009. So I'll borrow 120 seconds from you. In 2009, the gift of the Lincoln Collection to the state of Indiana was complete, and the Allen County Public Library received the 2-dimensional items, and the Indiana State Museum received the 3-dimensional items. And from that beginning, we thought, we have an awesome resource here. What should we do? And our North Star has always been more eyes on the collection. When we listened to what Lincoln said, one of the reasons they closed the museum is they wanted more people to see it. In a public library, without fee, without any kind of barrier to access, this amazing collection was going to be available to the public. So our North Star was more eyes on the collection, and 4 things are really important to us. One, we didn't want to make it a 20th century museum because 20th century museums are failing because they're 20th century museums in the 21st century. We wanted a 21st century experience to get more eyes on the collection. What does that mean? It means an intentional combination of digital, contemporary, and traditional. And we think that, as pedestrian as it might sound, having an experience where adults, or what we like to say, kids of all ages, adults and young people, have a larger-than-life experience, and you can create your own experience. So when you walk into a traditional museum, you see whatever the curator has put out. There's no digital anything, you just see what they put out. We flip our exhibits pretty frequently, and our patrons can choose their own adventure with the technology. What did we do in 2009 for about the next 4 years? We got $250,000 worth of federal money through the LSTA granting program, and we digitized everything we legally could. And those digitized scans of documents, photographs, books, pages, manuscripts, Civil War letters were done with such care that we could then, after digitizing them, we could apply technology to them. And we could make a postcard-sized picture as big as this wall and still be really clear. And that, again, kind of geeks out kids of all ages. And so when we finished our scanning, 34,000 items are freely available for anyone in the Milky Way galaxy with an internet connection. So anyone, anywhere can, without cost, without fee, without registration, access these things. And we've had tens of thousands of hits every quarter on this lincolncollection.org website. And then we started to muse, what else could we do to get more eyes on the collection? The leadership team of the library, about 4 or 5 years ago, started planning about how can we use underutilized space. And so what I call Main Street of the main library, right off the Great Hall, we repurposed some really underutilized base to create the Rolland Center. And in the first 3 years, over 66,000, almost 67,000 individuals have come into the Rolland Center and done something, which I think is pretty amazing. But I also like to tell our team and all of you, that's foundational. I think that's the foundation upon which we're gonna really rock it up. So we started, how can we tell the story of Lincoln, of the Civil War, of Team of Rivals, of Differ We Must? How can we tell that story to everyone? We've been engaging kids from the beginning, and we thought we should probably look for better ways of engaging learners and of engaging educators. And so thanks to Lincoln Financial Foundation and the Friends of the Lincoln Collection, we were able to use our technology, we were able to connect with the community, and we were able to fund for at least 3 years a full-time educator to work as the Rolland Center Education Outreach Coordinator. And that's my colleague, Sarah Schoolman. And I would say this even if Sarah wasn't here, she has kind of set that role and set that whole atmosphere on fire. Before this meeting here today, you were in how many classrooms? 3 today? 3 or 4?
5 different classes.
5 different classes today. So we're creating relationships, we're getting kids excited, and I won't steal her thunder, but we just continue to grow. We digitize, we present, and now we go out and, Sarah?
Yep. All right. Well, I am so excited to share with you some of the amazing things that we've been able to do in our schools lately. We started building the education department in the Rolland Center with a strategic plan. Everything we did kind of delved from our North Star, which as Curt said was empowering teachers. Getting eyes on the collection, as Curt said, but the way we do that as educators is to empower teachers to use the items in our collection. I remember my days as I was teaching, and I had this burning desire to teach my students about history and to get them excited about hearing stories of those who have lived before us. But there were a lot of gaps in the curriculum, and I was always struggling to find the right picture book or find an article that my students could read during reading to teach them stories about times like the Civil War. And as a teacher, I always struggled with finding those. And so when I came into this position, I thought, okay, how can we engage teachers to use the amazing collection that we have? Because teachers are the gatekeepers to their classrooms. Engage teachers and empower them to use our materials, and we've got this gateway to access hundreds and thousands of students. So as I was thinking about, okay, so what do we need to do to get teachers interested? We came up with these criteria that we needed to have our presentations, our programming, and our resources follow. So we have to develop things that appeal to teachers, right? They have to be things that are interesting to students, that are aligned to state standards, something that a teacher would look at and say, yes, that is going to have an impact on my students. That is going to help them learn. I want this in my classroom, and it has to be easy to implement. We know that teachers are crazy busy, and they don't have time for just one more thing. So that plug and play mentality has always been something that's been a part of our planning process. We also, of course, want to showcase the amazing artifacts that the Rolland Center has in all of the resources and presentations that we're putting out to teachers. So how can we make those shine as we're creating these things? Also, it was really important to us that we establish trust. We want educators to look at a program or look at a presentation or a resource and say, oh, that's from the Rolland Center. That's going to be good. I want to book that, or I want to download that. And we want that instant trust and draw when we see our name. So that's something that we've been working to build. And we also want everything that we do, of course, to empower students. We want them to discover history, engage with the stories, and realize how those stories are applicable to their lives today. And that relevance is something that's really powerful with kids when they realize this isn't something, as Curt will say, from my grandma's museum. Like, this is something relevant and powerful, and I can see how this impacts me today. So those have been our foundational criteria. And here are some of the action steps we've taken to accomplish those. So one thing that has been wildly popular lately are our read aloud sessions. And this is a strategic move to build relationships with teachers. So we advertise that we have certain books, from the Rolland Center that talk about the Civil War or Abraham Lincoln, and we would love to come and read a story to your class. It's really like low threat, really easy. The teacher doesn't have to do anything. In fact, when they come, they can grade some papers real quick while we read. It's a win-win and it's low risk. But that gets us into schools and it opens the door, and while we're there, we can say, hey, did you know we have the Rolland Center? And here's an example. Before I read the story, kids, I want to give you a little bit of background information. And we show an artifact or we show something. I leave the teachers with samples of the things that we can do. And the response has been incredible. Like almost every classroom I have been in has said, I want you to come back. So they're really reacting to this, and we're starting to build these relationships where we're gonna have repeated visits with classrooms. And that brings us to classroom presentations. So this was a classroom I was in yesterday at Lincoln Elementary. I visit there and teach those kids about the Civil War frequently, and they are so interested. They are turning into this little class of Civil War buffs. It's kind of hilarious. They come in and they're like, did you know that Abraham Lincoln kept papers in his hat? And I'm like, yeah, I did know that. And they'll tell me all these facts that they're discovering on their own. And they'll show me books like, hey, we've read this book in the library. It connects to your topic. So it's really amazing to see kids getting excited about learning and wanting to learn more on their own. And these in-class presentations have also been really popular as far as like special presentations. So during election time, we did a program on the election of 1864, and we showcased all of the items from our collection that talked about Lincoln versus McClellan and the campaign and all of those things, but we connected it to civics and said, this is what an election is. This is how it works. And that combination was really powerful with students and teachers, and it's getting them excited about engaging with their world. So our numbers are taking off they're kind of skyrocketing. So in 2024, I joined in July, and we started our programming last fall. And throughout the last semester, we saw 1,563 connections. That included digital connections and in person. But already this year, we've had 51 digital communications, 1,346 attend our digital presentations, and 1,176 in person. So far this year, we've had 2,573 connections in 2 months. So it's definitely starting to take off. Schools are getting engaged, and it's really exciting to see. We're also starting to gather some feedback, and this is one of my favorite things to share. I've asked students, how much do you enjoy learning about history? And if you'll see here, this is on a scale from 1 to 5. Most kids are hitting in that 4 or 5 that they're enjoying learning. And what I really love is how much does this stuff make you want to learn about history outside of school? And we've got 76% who are at a 4 or a 5, they want to go learn more. I also collected some qualitative data from these students, and they're sharing themes like, I never heard this stuff before. This is so interesting. I want to share this with my family. I hear that a lot, where they want to tell other people about what they're learning because they're excited. We're also getting amazing teacher feedback. They want to be notified of future programming. They want to schedule another visit. They think our presentations are effective and engaging, and they send us other notes just saying that they're engaged. I have teachers tell me that they're listening to the program and they think they're going to use this time to grade papers, but they end up being engaged in the resources and the artifacts, and we draw them in as well. So it's really exciting to see teachers and students alike be engaged and want repeat opportunities to look at the artifacts that the Rolland Center has. In addition to classroom visits, we're also expanding our digital footprint and trying to give teachers resources to teach their reading and history standards. So this is an example of something we have for our 4th and 5th grade students. We have the Lincoln Loop, which is a publication that tells the stories about Abraham Lincoln and his life and times. And it's written in a way designed for teachers specifically to use them for their reading instruction. So for example, this one is specifically written for theme. We made sure that the characters throughout show strong evidence of what the lesson is that they're supposed to learn. And then we provide some accompanying resources so teachers don't have to choose between teaching history and reading. They can teach them both simultaneously. These are things that teachers can just get on our website and print off. And we're continuing to expand this resource library as we go. And with that, we're also creating a fully developed high school curriculum. We have a team of 3 former high school educators who are working with me to develop a curriculum that focuses on topics from Lincoln's times and beyond. And it includes amazing sources like our primary sources from the Lincoln Collection, and it includes hands-on projects, so kids are doing things like analyzing the Emancipation Proclamation and then taking the power and the strategy that Lincoln uses to write his speech, and then they go write their own speech about something they're passionate about, and they try to mirror the strategies that Lincoln used and use them in their own proclamations. So again, connecting them to the relevancy of history and showing that they can learn from people like Lincoln who lived so long ago through the Rolland Center. So big impact, like we have so many ideas, there are so many things that we want to continue to do, but overall, we're just working to make sure that we have more eyes on the collection, that students are engaged with our materials, that they see the relevance to their own lives, and that teachers are empowered to use those resources in their classroom, and that they have the capacity to do that through the resources that we're providing. So, are there any questions about these opportunities that we've been presenting? Yes?
Yeah, what levels do you go into besides the elementary? Do you go in junior high, high school,
Yeah,
college?
so it's K through 12, and right now, most of the people that have booked me so far are elementary. Today I was in an 8th grade classroom all day, and I've had several of those experiences, so we're kind of targeting different areas. Started with elementary because that's my background. Now we've kind of broken into the middle school a little bit, which is great because their 8th grade social studies classes are teaching about the Civil War, so it's like a perfect fit. And then the curriculum, as we continue to finalize and release that, that's our target and our way to get into high school. So, but we're also trying to, like this last advertisement that I put out for our next round of programs, we tried to pinpoint it and target it a little bit more to target that high school audience, but K through 12. Yeah.
Does this go beyond Allen County? Is it available?
It can, yeah. So far, experience has been Allen County, but people can connect. We do have people from other places using our resources. I know a teacher in Illinois used an e-learning lesson that we have for a stick day that she had. She was like, I've got to go, I don't have anything planned, and she plugged in our e-learning lesson. So specifically, the digital impact is definitely being felt beyond the county. So, yes.
Sarah, I have two questions for you, but first I just want to thank you and Curt, and obviously there's a whole team behind
Of
you
course.
for what you're doing. It's great to have resources, it's great to have a space for it, to make it real, and make it, these kids are embracing it, it's something kind of special you're doing.
It is.
So my first question is, so I assume Lincoln kind of knows what we're doing and what kind of progress we're having. What kind of reaction have they had to any of this?
Well, interesting that you should ask.
Yes.
Sarah's been one busy person. We team presented to enterprise-wide program for Lincoln Financial earlier this month. It was sort of the pre-kickoff to their 120th anniversary as a company, and it blew up. I mean, they had hundreds of people all over the country from Lincoln looking at the program. All of you who are familiar with Teams and Zoom know you can do all these emojis and emoticon things, and there were hearts and fireworks and thumbs up and everything just all over the screen what Sarah was talking. That was so popular that the president of Lincoln Financial Foundation has invited me back to talk about the Rolland Center specifically to another enterprise-wide thinking and saying that their company would like their employees to know what happened to their collection, or what happened to the museum collection. It didn't go away, it wasn't sold off, it's being well managed, well handled, and through Sarah's efforts, well leveraged in the educational arena and really beyond. So I would say that Lincoln is pleased, and we're pleased that we continue to work with them. Sarah and I are on, it was weekly, now it's broken a little bit, I'll probably go back to weekly. We're working with Lincoln on upgrading their Lincoln Legacy curriculum that they put together maybe a decade-ish ago, that we want to make it more plug and play. As Sarah articulated, educators don't have even like 10 minutes to develop something. They want something that'll plug right in to their technology and to their curriculum. And so Sarah and her team of education and curriculum advisors are doing amazing work, and you guys meet weekly via Zoom. And these advisors are from literally all over the world.
So I did have one other
Yeah.
quick question. Either one of you can answer this. Don't think about it too hard, but is there some item or exhibit that is the most popular thing?
I would say for me in schools, they really love seeing Civil War ciphers. We have items in our collection that are like coded messages from generals, and we did a presentation on Civil War espionage and gave them their own messages to decode. They loved those. They thought that was so cool to see those messages. They're like, how did you get this? So that one has been one that they really like. So I'm not sure what your response would be to that.
Well, I would just offer to compliment that. It's been really amazing the outlier experiences that our team has observed in the Rolland Center. Recently, there was a mother with her young kids and a little baby in arms, and they were going through the Rolland Center, and she was dancing in the immersive space to the music of the second inaugural. We've had young kids that are doing like this on their tiptoes to try to get to the touch screens, and of course, you know, the 5 and 6 year olds know better than the 45 and 46 year olds how to use all that technology, so they're just having a ball with it. That's been kind of neat.
Curt, on a more mundane basis, who is liable if anything happens to the collection? If a book is missing or?
Well, my short answer, which is really more honest than snarky, Ben, we don't allow that. That's not an option.
Okay, and the real answer?
We still don't allow it. The collection is insured. The Friends of the Lincoln Collection really underwrite the whole operation, all the salaries, all the technology. So the Friends of the Lincoln Collection, they pay the insurance. Dave and Joe are nodding their head yet. They pay the insurance. And we do use, even though we want to have a 21st century museum type experience, not a 20th century one, we use all the safeguards that you would use for a $20 million collection, and that's what the collection's valued at. So it's kept behind locks. There's a very, very limited access to the collection itself. That no one can just badge in, walk in, key in. That's not an option. We have a great, thanks to Lorraine and security and their team, and we now have a great contractor. You know, the fire suppression, fire safety. We have FM200 fire suppression instead of water in those special areas. So I think we're checking, if not all the boxes, most of all the boxes, in securing the collection.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for letting me
Thank
tell
you.
you a little bit about what we're doing.
Thank you. And of course, all of you are invited at any time to come take a tour of the Rolland Center and the Lincoln Collection. We'll make sure Curt's there to serve as guard for all the books, but we'll let you back and take a look.
Okay, let's move to item 8, a review and approval of our 2024 annual report.
Thank you so much, Ben. So we come to you every February with our prior year annual report for you to review and approve. So a bit of context for those who haven't been through this process before. The annual report is a very lengthy report, statistical report that we are required to complete by the Indiana State Library. The questions are developed through the Institute of Museum and Library Services with the State Library. This year was a bit of an extra challenge because they changed some of the rules on us. When I say they, the Institute of Museum and Library Services and the State Library, some of the questions changed. This year they asked some new things, and they didn't ask things that were asked for the past decade. They changed some definitions of how they are counting things like databases and online learning platforms. They're changing some of the definitions of collections. They even changed how some of the expenditure categories are set up. They also asked for a different way to count programming. So it made a complicated process, even more complicated at least this year, but we got it down, and in the future years then we'll have more apples to apples. This was a bit of an outlier because of all of the changes. Our process to complete this, it's definitely a team effort, and it's pretty lengthy. We start right at the beginning of January when we have all the data from the previous year. We farm out the various parts to the people on the staff who are in charge of those divisions. We get all that data back to us. Elena has the very tedious and very important job of inputting all the data into the online form. And then there's a team of us, I call it the review team. We check it, and we check it, and we check it again. And even sometimes after we've checked it 5 times and we send it to you as draft, I find a mistake, which is what happened this time, so I apologize for that. It was a mistake in our favor in that we had undercounted in the amount of library card holders and program attendees, so thank you for your grace on that. I did send you an update. It's a lot of data to take in, and you may wonder, well, what's important, so what? I'll go through what I look for when we do this report and the numbers and the benchmarks that I am checking. I'll share that, and then I'm happy to answer any questions for you. So this year, ACPL received, when I say this year, 2024, we received more than 1.7 million visits. The main library alone had about 725,000 visits. So I wanted to put that into some context. And when I give these comparisons, I am definitely not trying to compete or compare with any of these other agencies. It's not apples to apples. Some of the agencies I'll refer to, they are not open year-round. They are not open 7 days a week. We are multiple buildings and they are one. But I still think it gives some really interesting context of just how much foot traffic our buildings get. So for context, our wonderful Fort Wayne Zoo, they average about 650,000 visitors annually. Fort Wayne International Airport in 2024, they had 856,803 passengers come through last year. The Coliseum in 2023, which is the last figure I could find, they had just over 1 million visitors. And Parkview Field, they average about 372,000 guests annually. All that being said, when you hear talk about the top attractions in the community, the places that get the most foot traffic, we definitely should be on that list because we are seeing that as well. As far as library patrons, last year we had 199,223 registered patrons. That did show a 6% increase from the previous year. I know much of that can be attributed to Aja and the marketing team for their library card campaign they had earlier in 2024 when we had the limited edition special artwork cards. So currently, we're at 51.6% of Allen County residents have a library card. And we're proud of that. We can confidently say that more than half of the residents of Allen County have a library card. In comparison, and again, we're not in a competition, but just to give some context to that number, in 2023, which is the most recent number I could find, Indianapolis had about 30% of its residents with library cards. Evansville had about 40%. Carmel had 59%. So our stretch goal that we have in our strategic plan is that by the year of 2028, we would love to see 75% of Allen County residents with the library card. Toledo, Ohio can already boast that in their library that I look to a lot as far as goals and just really admiring the work that they do. They're at 75%. We would love to get there by the end of our next strategic plan. And we do have some methods and strategies as to how to get there. And later on in my director's report, we're going to share one of those with you. But we're pretty proud that over half the county has a library card, and we just want that figure to continue to go up. 1.8 million Wi-Fi sessions occurred at library facilities in 2024. That was an increase of 22% from the previous year. Interestingly enough, the number of sessions on public internet computers, so hardwired computer stations, that stayed almost identical between 23 and 24. It was about 197,000. The total physical items in the collection is about 2.6 million. So physical items, that means stuff you can hold in your hand and check out. It's consistent with the previous year. Through Hoopla and Libby, our online ebook provider platforms, our patrons have access to about 1.3 million e-materials, in addition to that 2.6 million physical copies. Total circulation, and when I say total circulation, that means all items that are borrowed, that are checked out, that increased by 8% from the previous year. Of the, this is a big number, 4,634,166 items that were checked out in 2024. 30% were ebooks and e-audiobooks. 30% were e-materials. The circulation rate of our physical materials, the stuff you can hold in your hand, that stayed relatively flat. It decreased by less than 1%. The percentage increase for electronic material checkout, that was 36%. And I wondered if that was on par with other libraries across the country. And I had a discussion with other library directors from Urban Library Council libraries. Those are libraries with populations serving 100,000 and more. And it was very consistent across the board. Libraries in our size range across the country, they saw physical circulation stay relatively flat, but electronic circulation grow substantially. About 14% of our operating budget, which is about $5.1 million, was spent on collections this year. Collections meaning the stuff you can check out. The state minimum standard is 8% of an operating budget should be spent on collections. We obviously were well in excess of that. The national average is typically about 11 or 12%. So I'm happy to say that we do edge that out. We are putting our resources where our patrons can see them, in things that they can check out and borrow and enjoy. 62% of our operating budget went for staff expenditures, and that includes both salary and benefits. A common benchmark libraries across the country use is about 2/3 of their budget going towards staff, so we are, again, on target with that. Our total operating expenditures per capita was $94.90. This was an increase from the previous year in 2023 when it was about $87.93. This was not entirely unexpected in that we did include in our approved 2024 budget expenditures such as HVAC repairs at multiple libraries, which was significant. The replacement of furniture and some new furniture that you saw in the Great Hall, and also the Dunkin' Donuts renovation into what is now the studio. Although Dave brought up a really interesting point, because in the annual report, some fields are auto-populated for us. One of those fields is the population of your county or your service area, and it uses the 2020 census data, which is 384,000 and something. But current projections have that population growing by about 10,000, I believe.
Yeah, it's 394, 554.
So if you use that number and find our per capita expenditures, that actually decreases it by $2. And that's a lot of numbers to throw at you. Happy to answer any questions.
What happens to the annual report? Who uses it, or is it filed away?
That's a very good question. So after we approve it tonight, I ask you to sign the signature page, and then we electronically submit it to the state library along with all the other libraries throughout Indiana. Then they compile the data and they make very easily searchable spreadsheets that have all the libraries in Indiana and their data, so you can compare and contrast from your neighbors across the state. And that lives on the state library website for over a decade. You can go back and look at our stats and the stats of other Indiana libraries for well over 10 years.
Jim, you had a question?
Yeah, Susan, you and I had a brief conversation email-wise,
Yeah.
and I'm not really sure whether we actually got everything out. As you look at this page, I'm sure this is generated from the annual report.
Correct.
Is there any way that for these particular areas that are listed here, that we have like another comparison of, say, last year's versus this year's?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So in the big document, you'll see current year and previous year. So you do have it there. As far as the one sheet, I would be happy to make a revision of that or do it in subsequent years where that is more readily available to you.
Subsequent years is fine.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, a lot of that stuff that you were saying, you know, we could have seen that there, and you could have expounded on
Yep.
other things, so.
That's good feedback, thank you. anything I can do to make this more meaningful, I'm happy to do, because it's a lot.
Well, we could take this to our representatives, our appointed representatives, and this would be a good talking point. Seeing this one page right here without the information, they could use comparisons.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, Jim, because once we're done here, Aja and her marketing team, they take this data and create something called the Community Impact Report that makes the figures more meaningful and relevant to the impact that they have in the community. Yep.
Really great information. It's obvious that they collect this on everybody. Who's our peers? I assume we're in the top tier. Who are the others in the state that are doing a really good job that are our competitive peers?
Kurt's behind you saying nobody.
Nobody.
So that's an interesting question, and in Indiana, that's a hard question to answer because Kurt's not wrong. In some ways, there aren't any. So you have Indianapolis, and as far as population, they are much bigger. However, and again, I'm not disparaging any of our colleagues across the state, when you look at their percentage of population with library cards, much lower than ours. They're around 30%. Indianapolis is number one as far as size, budget, all the others, we're number two. And then number three is Lake County, I believe. Curt is nodding.
It's either Lake County or Evansville, they go back and forth.
Yeah.
Vandenberg County.
And my concern isn't size, my concern is who's bringing the most value to the community, or however you as the executive director want to measure it. I'm not worried about who's
Yeah.
big.
You could define that in many different ways. I will tell you, and we have Indiana libraries doing amazing work, but as far as libraries that I look at and I really consider them like goals, Toledo, Ohio, like I mentioned, they do a remarkable job. They're already at 75% as far as their population having library cards. Their stretch goal was 95%, which, oh my gosh, I could only dream. I think Dayton does incredible work. So those are some neighboring-ish libraries that I really look at and admire.
Susan, can I expand on Ben's question about who uses this information?
Absolutely.
In your annual comprehensive financial report, this is the report that we've done for, or won the award for excellence for the last 35 years, 32 years. There are in the back the operating indicator statistics. And that's a deliberate action by the Government Finance Officers Association to try and put more meaning behind just the financial numbers. You know, they made decisions long ago that said, okay, so what if you've raised this kind of, you're doing that kind of revenue or things like that, what are you turning it into? And those indicators are 10-year statistics running, and those are used to judge part of that award. And so Jill and I use these statistics a lot for that. And that will come into play very importantly this year and subsequent years when we issue bonds. Because one thing that rating agencies, underwriters, et cetera, look for is, like that report is called, the excellence in financial reporting. And the thing they like to see is it just a bunch of numbers? How do you translate it to how your performance is? And those indicators mean a lot to those rating agencies, and that translates into a lower percentage, thus a lower payment for our bonds. So we saw that happen in 2000 through 2004, actually into 2012 with refinancing, where that ACFR really made a big difference in what kind of rates we were given by those underwriters. So not to get into the weeds, but they are used more than just in Indiana and by the Indiana libraries to compare each other. They're used on the national level. I'll shut up.
It's good context.
Tom?
Yeah, Susan, I think it's interesting that we've got 51%, and I'm sure that's going up on an annual basis. What programs in the library would you capitulate on as far as accelerating that percentage? Is it just walk-ins, or are there any programs that you see that accelerate that from going from 51 to maybe 60?
That's an excellent question. There's an element of walk-ins. This time, it was around this time last year, we had the library card campaign that Aja and her team put together. And we offered library cards that featured the murals of very popular artwork throughout the city and Allen County. And that was definitely a draw-in for people who, sometimes people wanted to replace their library card with a brand new design, but also people who had never had a library card before. That was definitely a hook to get them in. Programmatically, summer learning program, the activities we have during school vacation to engage children and teens all summer long, that does bring in people to get library cards. We are going to be, and Beth is going to be talking about this later in the meeting, we are starting a pilot with Fort Wayne Community Schools, and the eventual goal is that every Fort Wayne Community School student, and eventually all the other school districts as well, have a library card. So we've been working with the school administrators on how to make that happen. And programming is one way to get people in the door to get library cards, but I think in order to get where we really want to go, where we want to hit that 75%, it's going to have to be more of an outreach effort and working with schools. We also do have some relatively new software and data collecting tools where we can map where people are in the county who have library cards and identify pockets where maybe we aren't as represented, and then do some targeted outreach and marketing to those areas.
Thank you.
Questions or comments?
Did you have something to say, Aja?
I just wanted to add that we should have the community impact report document ready for next board meeting, so that you would have that. And we mail those out to our elected officials, and we make that available to the media. We'll send out a press release about that. So the word should get out to the community. And we do a comparison on those from last year to this year, noting our successes. So we like to tout those successes anytime we can in the community. And that's really part of helping people know the value that we bring and how we can be part of their lives, and enticing them to come in and get a card, because the card is the key to using the library. And I talk about this with my team, my marketing team, is that's our role as a marketing team, is not to make posters. Our role is to bring in people who are not already engaging with the library, and getting them to the door or to the website, signing up for that card. And then it's in the hands of our incredible staff to give them an amazing experience, to have the right books for them. We know that that's going to happen. So if we can just get them to the door, get them to the web, get that card in their hands, then they'll have that rich library experience and keep them coming back. And I think that that's what we saw in the last year, is intentional campaigns pushing people to the door. And so that's why we can see that growth. We just have to keep doing that in big ways and in strategic partnerships that are going to help us get those big numbers. But we don't like to do things small, so.
If I may add, more than 12% of Allen County residents speak a language other than English at home, and the intentionality of Susan and our team to focus on how we are providing services to people in the languages that they speak and that they read is also going to open the door to those extra percentages at the top of the 100% that will be hard to reach otherwise. We have really excellent outreach happening now with the addition of our bilingual program specialist.
Great. Any final comments before we have a motion to approve the report? May I have a motion then to approve the 2024 annual report?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay? Okay.
Thank you. And Ben, may I have you sign this now so I don't walk off and forget it? Library Board President.
Okay. While I'm signing, review of the facility master plan.
Yes, the next item is the review of facility master plan related policies, and our Chief Operating Officer, Kim, is going to speak about that. So some context, some of you were here a few years ago when we were working with Boswick Design Partnership to develop the facility master plan, which evolved into what is going to be phase one of our capital projects. When we were working with those consultants, they recommended that the board adopt a series of related policies that would guide the decisions and the process as we enter into this capital phase. Kim worked with them. Kim also was in consultation with Pete and Ted about these policies as well. So tonight we have before you in draft form a site selection policy and a co-location and joint use policy. There is no immediacy or urgency to approve them right now. It can definitely be something that is decided upon at a subsequent meeting, but we thought, considering that we are in the process of issuing RFPs for owner's rep, it was time to bring them to the table for at least a preliminary discussion. And I will turn it over to Kim to share what she and Pete and Ted have been working on.
Well, there are a lot of words here, so I don't know if you all had a chance to read beforehand. But the gist of both of them, the first one, the site selection and property acquisition, in particular, I think that one is vital. It's a little longer, and you'll see there's more definitions of things in there, as well as, okay, this is what this means and this is what we're looking for. Because through my experience, it can be very complicated, like when you're going to buy. So when we're working with a realtor, what are we looking for? We can give the realtor this, say, here are the criteria that you all have agreed upon. You can also just easily, if someone wants to give you land, which can be, it sound great at the onset, but if you don't have any guidelines to help steer what that's about, even when we might be looking at existing buildings and property to renovate something existing, this would apply to all of that. So essentially, it's I would encourage you all to read through it, though, in detail, because this is basically me working with the consultants and also then going through my years of consulting, working with other libraries to put something together that I think would work for you all, but you might disagree with one piece of it, so I think it's crucial that you do read the details and be cognizant of what's in that. And the same with the co-located and joint use library facilities policy. That essentially relates to, say we had an opportunity to have a library in a strip mall or be in a hospital or whatever might arise. This particular policy will help guide in those situations.
What is your desire? To postpone any decision on that till next month so that we could, I did not read this in all candor. I was waiting for the movie.
Is that my next step?
We have a TV station, yeah.
And we briefly talked about it, what was it, back on the 13th, but it's, I mean, there's a lot of information here. But Pete, I mean, you can see at the top, I mean, I started working with Pete on this back in spring of 2023, so we've been looking at it a long time.
I think your suggestion's good. I have read through it all, Ben, and I would suggest that we shouldn't do anything with it until everyone does.
I'm so sorry.
I don't think we should make any motions or proceed until everybody really has had a chance to.
Okay, so we'll wait till next month. There's no rush.
No, I mean, we want to give it to our realtor, we want to have it ready for the owner's rep and all those things, but I feel like we have time.
Okay, good. Let's put it on the agenda for next month.
Absolutely.
I do have two questions for you, Kim, on this. It just wasn't clear to me, so was it new in 2023, or was it developed and it's just never been adopted?
I wrote these in 2023, we've never had these before.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I have a question. There's no right or wrong answer on this, but I love the selection criteria, the fact you put this together. By the way they've set up, they're very objective. I mean, they're the right criteria,
Yeah.
but they're very objective, and I
Yeah.
assume that's been done intentionally.
It's intentional.
So the group
Right, but we
figures out
can
what's-
be more strict on those if someone has a particular preference. There's also some percentages in there. So, for instance, if, never mind, that's in another one. That's naming rights, that's for down the road. But if there's numbers in there or anything like that, I mean, those things you really need to agree on. I just put them in because it's like, it might be typical of what someone may do or how they word it, but you might all disagree and want to reword it or change something.
It indicated on this that this was reviewed by Pete in '23. Has the law changed since then?
Yeah, I actually put a note on there. While the discussions between Kim and Susan and Pete and one of our associates, Andrew Heck, began in 2023, we have recently looked at this again when it was going to be an agenda item, and Beers Mallers can confirm there are no law changes that would impact the guidelines that are set out in these policies.
Okay.
All of this is still subject to the other statutory requirements before the Board of Trustees acquires property. This is just the way I look at it, and Kim, I don't mean to step on your toes. This just kind of sets out some guidelines for us to consider, or you to consider as a board when you're looking at the properties to purchase for a new library branch.
Good. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll address it next month. Let's move on then. Closure for September 30th.
Yes, so every fall, we have a staff development day, and that is a day where all of our facilities are closed, and our staff comes together for a day of learning and team building. So I come to you with a request that we hold that event on September 30th of 2025 to have all facilities closed for our staff development day. We have secured a location for the event. This year, we hope to be at the Pearl Arts Center downtown, a new facility for us, so we're excited to spend some time with them. We also have found a keynote speaker for the morning. It is Michelle Gladio. She is here in Fort Wayne and does a lot of consulting and speaking both here locally and nationwide, and she is planning a keynote address on effective communication.
Can I have a motion for September 30th as Staff Development Day? Closes us down for the day, does it not?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay? Okay. And let's move to your report.
Absolutely. So I want to thank several people. I want to thank our events team and our Access Fort Wayne team for taking us on the road to Disalle. This was one of the more challenging setups for them, but I think they did a beautiful job. And I think it's important that as a board and as a team, we get out and see the various facilities of the Allen County Public Library. And I know you appreciate it as well, but it did take some extra effort to make it possible in this particular setting. So I definitely want to give a huge shout out and thanks to Access Fort Wayne and Events for their work. I also want to introduce one of the managers who works out of this building, Monica Hadsel, who is back there in the corner. She is the fairly new manager, as of December, of the audio reading service, which is our service where we provide audio content for people who with visual impairments. And she has a team of about 100 volunteers who come in and read for her listeners. A really incredible program. Some other things in my report. We did unveil the new studio at Maine on February 11th, which happened to be National Inventors Day. So that was a happy accident. Actually, it wasn't accidental. It was very intentional that we had the event that day. And the grand opening highlighted improvements to the space that was previously occupied by Dunkin' Donuts. If you haven't been in there yet, I encourage you to check it out. It's just gorgeous, and particularly looking in from the outside, just the activity and the excitement and the creativity, it's just really something to see. It's just very, very impressive. The changes in the space include a new podcast booth, expanded programming space, and some new equipment. So I testified at the Indiana House and Ways Means Committee earlier this month. That was something that I've never done before. I can't say I had it on my 2025 bingo card, but there it was. And I guess I wouldn't have expected that it took off as much as it did, but you probably have heard a little something in the media about Dolly Parton and the Imagination Library. So I was testifying in support of restoring state matching funds to Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. This has been an issue that's been all over the news, and as the case sometimes when something hits the news, some of the reporting, particularly nationally, wasn't entirely clear and entirely accurate, so I'd like to clear up some of that. I do want to give credit to the reporters who covered this story locally. I think they did a very accurate and fair job, but when it got out to a larger audience, some of the message may have gotten off track a bit, so let me tell you what I know now and what we're looking for in the future. So Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, you may know that we started that program here in Allen County in October, and that was in partnership with our Library Foundation being the fiscal partner. It is a program that costs about $31 per child annually to participate. Some might ask, and they have, if you look at any social media comments, well, I thought Dolly paid for all of it. Dolly pays for a lot of it. Dolly Parton and her foundation, they pay for the administrative costs for the program. They pay for marketing pieces. They pay for a very complex database called the book ordering system, where we on the local end add children and maintain those lists. So Dolly puts in a lot. But where there is local and state support are for the cost of the actual books and mailing of the books. So for the past 2 years, Indiana libraries had the opportunity to get matching funds from the state to help subsidize their local costs. So in our case, with the 6,000 children that we have, actually it's 6,100 at this point, correct, I beg your pardon, who are active in this program right now. Half of that cost is covered by our Library Foundation, and those are monies that they have raised in the community, and the other half is covered by the state of Indiana. In the current draft budget for the state, any sort of state matching funds has been zeroed out, and at this point, they have not been added back into the budget. As you all know, this is a long budget session, so the final budget won't be determined until the end of April. Right now, they are in recess. We are not quite sure what will happen to the funding as far as the state budget. However, we do know that Governor Braun is concerned and does find value in the program and has asked his wife, First Lady Maureen Braun, to spearhead some fundraising and partnership efforts to find sources to either subsidize or replace that state match. And that is all that I know for now, but it's obviously a situation that we care a lot about and are keeping close track of, and when I know more, I will definitely let you know more. It definitely has caused some conversation in the community, and it's had a positive effect in that it shows how many people are really passionate about this program, who are so glad that we were finally able to bring it to the community. We've had some really sizable donations come in the last week, and I have to believe a lot of that is due to the conversation in the community about the security of the funding for the program going forward. So I'm very optimistic, and it was really reassuring and heartwarming to see the statement issued by the governor that he sees the importance of this program and that he is committed to finding a solution for the funding gap.
What is the amount that the state provided last year?
About $6 million.
I see.
Mm-hmm. So more to come on that, I'm sure, but that's where we are now.
Okay.
But until then, we are taking new registrations. They literally come in every day, sometimes every hour. So happy to take more registrations, also happy to take more donations. Yes, Pat, yeah.
Susan, let's assume the legislature ends up standing with what they're doing there. How does that affect the program?
It will have an impact.
Does it go away? Does it get cut back?
It could be a lot of different things. It doesn't necessarily have to go away. I would be heartbroken if it would, and I believe our foundation would be as well. Our foundation knows how much this program is valued by the community, and they are committed to looking for additional funding as well. I think a worst case scenario is that we may have to put a temporary hold on new registrations and serve the children that are already signed up until enough additional money is raised to open up the registrations again. And I definitely hope, none of us hope we have to get to that point, but it's a possibility.
Further questions, further comments?
No more on Dolly? Okay. We'll go over some other things too. In other Library Foundation news, very, very exciting that we have our second class of ACPL Questa Scholars. They are Misha Donaldson, who is an outreach librarian in our Pontiac branch, and Allison Nielsen, who is a branch assistant at Monroeville. This is a program that is funded with support from the ACPL Foundation and Questa. It awards forgivable loans for staff pursuing their master's in library science. So now we have 4 staff members at ACPL who are continuing their education and getting that master's in library science with support from the foundation and Questa.
Can you get that in Fort Wayne, or where do you go for the?
It is typically an online program, and you can go through Indiana University, you can go through San Jose State, that's another popular one, but most locally who are here are going through the IU program.
I see.
By popular request, we have acquired a database called Candid, and it is available for in-house use by patrons, and it is a database of grant makers and funding opportunities to help nonprofits and other agencies, city governments, county governments, and individuals find potential grant funding. And particularly in these budget times, I think a lot of people are looking for ways to augment budgets through grant funding, so we're sure that will be popular.
How are we making that known to the not-for-profit organizations?
Beth, can I?
Sure. Well, we acquired it because of the popular request. We've been reaching out through all kinds of nonprofits that we work with on a regular basis who had mentioned the need. We've been keeping a list of those people, and as soon as the subscription was live, we sent them direct notification that it was available. I've also been working very closely with the Community Foundation, with other nonprofit leaders in town to make sure that they're aware. And there's ongoing discussion now among several nonprofit leaders about ways to make sure that the nonprofits are networking well right now, and sharing this information is part of that. We have this available on our website, so anybody is welcome to take a look and find the links, although they won't work unless you are at a library. And I've heard already that it is being used.
Thank you.
And that is not our choice that it won't work outside the library, that's just a condition of the licensing.
That's correct.
Okay.
I've asked Lorraine to talk briefly about our interns that we are hosting this spring. So we do have an internship program, and different departments host interns depending on the need of the department and the need of the intern. And Lorraine, would you want to share the interns that we have joining us for the spring?
Yeah, for the spring, so Access Fort Wayne has always been a popular department, so they have another intern, actually just outside the door.
He's right outside.
Because social services is new to the library, we actually have 2 interns, a BSW student and an MSW intern. And then we also have an intern in the genealogy center this year. So those requests aren't typically formalized. We have departments that use them, typically like Access Fort Wayne, that word of mouth, we get another intern. But eventually I'd like to have this more formalized. I know IT has used one in the past. So yes, we have 4 interns this semester.
Thank you. We were among 707 participants that were selected to receive funding from the Schools and Libraries Cybersecurity Pilot Program through the Federal Communications Commission. These 707 entities will receive a combined $200 million in funding for cybersecurity measures over the course of a 3-year period. And we were selected from a pool of more than 2,700 applicants, representing $3.7 billion in cybersecurity funding requests. And Kim, is there any other additional information you can add to that?
Well, yeah, I think you got all my notes here. Next steps, I could talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
So currently, we're in the process. So first, I need to thank Kevin Wells, who's our IT manager, and Mike Taggart, who's our network services manager, who put together the 9-page application. I honestly don't think we would have been selected if they didn't have the knowledge that they had to fill out the form in the way that they did. So now what we're doing, our next deadline is in August of this year, And so we're reviewing the cybersecurity portfolio with our trusted vendors and determining the products and services that we want to consider. And then we follow the same process that we do with E-rate. So basically, those services go out, and then we have to, they submit RFPs to us by August 18th, to be exact, of this year. So it's a nice hefty change. I mean, it's preliminarily awarded $525, but it's a nice little chunk of change. Yeah. So very pleased, because what they had 34 applicants altogether.
Yes.
That's a pretty decent
Yeah,
pool.
it was competitive.
Yeah.
Kim,
Yes.
is this to do things that we were planning to do and had budgeted
We're
for
trying to,
anyhow?
we're
or
trying
is
to
this
figure
stuff
out
we
how to
could
pay
never
for
touch?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff we want to do, but didn't really have the funds. I mean, had started exploring just to see what it was gonna cost so we could go to Dave and Jill and try to get money. But, yeah, so this is a nice surprise.
And finally, thank you, Kim. We were talking about how we are increasing our percentage of library card holders in the county, and I teased that we were working on a pilot project to get those numbers up even more. And Beth, would you like to share what you've been working on with Fort Wayne Community Schools?
Sure. We have really good relationships with all of the school districts in the county, and that is a big part because our librarians are fantastic, and they work with schools all the time. They share our summer learning program. They are in preschools, they are in daycares, but they are also in K-12. And you heard from Sarah just one example of that today. We have been developing relationships with all the districts, but for Fort Wayne Community School, it's extra special. We work with them closely on the lunch program every summer, and have really positive administrative relationships. We are, it's not in my inbox yet, but today I hope to see a signed memorandum of understanding with Fort Wayne Community Schools to roll out student library cards for Fort Wayne Community School students. We are starting with a pilot group of one middle school aged cohort, 6th through 8th grade. Parents will receive information in the next week or so about that, and then we're going to be developing processes behind the scenes. That's Nate Bernard and his incredible team working on that. How to take data from Fort Wayne Community Schools and turn it into library card holders. Fort Wayne Community School libraries are rolling out a competition, so students will be able to design a library card just for Fort Wayne Community School students, and we'll be able to send those out starting in May. And then we anticipate that enrollment in this more widely for middle school and high schoolers will be part of the registration process in May, starting in May, that will go through the summer, so that by next fall, unless they are opted out, students will have access to ACPL library cards just for Fort Wayne Community School, with that pride of making, and access to all the incredible resources. I heard today that our access to tutor.com and the free tutoring available there, as well as through their Princeton Review products for test prep. So many of the resources that ACPL offers are exactly what our students need. And by opening this avenue for increasing cardholder numbers for ACPL, but more importantly, increasing access to these resources for our students, we hope to see some real payoff in terms of lifelong learning habits, academic achievement. The possibilities are endless. We're excited to be starting this now. And we have meetings lined up with other school districts soon. I'm sure that they will be jealous. And we look for expansion as soon as we validate the process through this MOU.
Does this require parental approval?
Opt-in and opt-out language is being finessed by Fort Wayne Community Schools.
So the parents will have a say?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. They cannot share student data without, they have lots of controls about student data and what they are allowed to share. So their lawyer has vetted the entire process. Mm-hmm. And we will only be receiving data about students who are part of the program after an opt-in or opt-out process that Fort Wayne Community Schools designs.
Okay. Questions on that? Sounds interesting.
That's my report.
No, it's quite a report. Any public, anybody from the public here? How about out there, any public comment? No, nobody, no questions? I don't see our switchboard. I guess there's no. Well, then, any final good and welfare?
Beck, we do have some new business with the foundation appointments.
Oh, yeah, right, that's a good point. We have 2 requests, or 3?
We have multiple requests. Would you like for me to share what I put at everybody's seat?
Yeah,
So we had our president's meeting with Rich Beck a few days ago, and he is requesting that this body make an appointment and some reappointments to the foundation board. And we put at each of your seats the letters. One is a new appointment. It is for Brad Little to become a member of the Allen County Public Library Foundation. You have a letter plus his resume. You may very well know Brad. He is the president and CEO of the Community Foundation. So to say he would be an amazing addition to our foundation is the understatement of the year. Would be an incredible addition. We're really excited that he was willing to join our foundation. We also have, I'm asking the president how we should handle this. I don't know if it needs to be one motion or 2.
why don't we separate it?
Separate it, okay.
Can we have a motion to appoint Brad Little to the foundation board?
So moved.
Second, is there further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay, so we have an appointment.
Thank you. He will be an amazing addition. You also have at your seats reappointment letters for 3 of the current Foundation Board of Directors to renew their terms for another 4-year term. One is Kent Castleman, one is Stan Richard, and the other, signed by Rich Beck, is for Rich Beck.
He gave himself a good record.
He did.
High marks.
Any objection to grouping the 3? If not, can I have a motion to appoint the 3 as discussed?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. So we're through. No public comment. We'll adjourn. A motion to that effect, and we have an executive session following the. Paul, you want to make a motion that we adjourn?
Sure. Move for adjournment.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Well, how you doing?
Not bad, Paul, how you doing?
Not too bad. Can't complain. Nobody listens anyway.
That's right.
That's right. We got booted out of the
Did you really?
Yeah,
I just wanted to turn
they
this
won't let you
PA
smoke
just
cigars
off
anymore.
before,
Really?
so it
Yeah.
didn't pop.
You can smoke cigarettes.